Hello, welcome to California Humanities. This is our office where we have been for the last couple of years. Even though we're a 40-year-old organization, we're a nonprofit that gives grants and delivers programs that helps connect us through ideas and documentary films and art performances. We're here today because we're celebrating the 100th birthday of our home here at Swan's Market. My name is Julie Fry, I'm President and CEO, and we're really glad to have you in our home. I have to say we're here with this wonderful panel to talk about what makes a neighborhood, and I am wearing my t-shirt, my Diamond District is my neighborhood, so I am representing today. But I think that this is a wonderful opportunity to talk about this wonderful history of place and how places evolve and what hanging on to the stories of the past mean to us. So we've got Jeremy Liu, who's going to be our moderator. We have Gail Dixon, we have Mayor Libby Schaaf, and we have Kimberly Mayfield. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy. There's going to be plenty of opportunity to engage in discussion with our panel, but Jeremy's going to get us started. Great. Before we start, I also just remembered, I just saw you in the corner of my eye. Just want to introduce Josh Simon, who is the director of Ebaldsey and is really an integral part of the community that we have here. So Josh, really nice to have you here.
Thanks everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Good. I am really excited to be here with you and with this amazing panel. What we want to do today is, I'm going to put out 3 questions and ask them to pick one by way of introducing themselves. And so to answer the question by way of introducing themselves. And it all has to do with ways that places like Swan's help communities hold place-based values. So that's a little preview. And then what we're going to do is turn it over to you all to ask questions. We're going to gather up some questions. And then we're going to huddle up and decide what we really, really want to talk about based on all those questions. And then we're going to have a conversation amongst the panel about maybe 1, maybe 2 of the questions that you all throw out to us. And then we're going to wrap it up with a few last questions for everybody. And then a sort of call to action at the end. To start, I want to introduce myself. I was the executive director of Ebaldsey, the East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation, that redeveloped this property essentially twice between 2009 and 2012. And I'm now the senior fellow for arts, culture, and equitable development at PolicyLink, where we're helping ensure that equitable development can be driven by arts and cultural considerations and also arts and cultural strategies. And it seems like a really timely role to have in the city of Oakland now, so excited to be there supporting the work of organizations like Ebaldsey and others, and Cal Humanities that can actually do this kind of work in the city, but all around the country, around the state. So the 3 questions I have that I'm going to, are a menu for you all, and ideally each pick one of them, but you don't have to, are how are the forces and pressures facing our neighborhoods different now than they have been in the past?
That's the one I want.
Okay, they could get better. Yeah, we'd love to hear about that from your perspective. How can a longtime community's values continue to be manifested in a neighborhood while responding to these pressures? So a 2-parter, but also one that's maybe of interest given some of the overall work that you all are doing. And then lastly,
it doesn't matter.
And then lastly, how can a place express history? So literally, how does a physical place express history? And how does this help maintain these place-based values, right? So the things that we all care about, the history that this place has represented, how does it actually express and manifest itself? So you want to choose now? Maybe we know something in the first one.
Excuse me, can you all speak up?
Yeah,
just
no, not for each. One, you just by way of introducing yourself, you can actually sort of answer this question. And Gail, I kind of feel like the second one might be good for you, given the work you're doing with World Enterprises and other things.
You want me to start?
Well, do you feel comfortable
I'm not
introducing
sure.
yourself through this?
I can introduce myself. I'm not sure I know how to segue it into one of these.
Why don't you introduce yourself and then answer that question?
Okay.
And do you feel comfortable doing the third one?
Yeah.
Great. And do you want to start, since you so eagerly grabbed
Oh,
the first
I'm happy to
question?
start.
Yeah.
Do you want me to stand up?
Yes.
Right here.
We'd like to see you.
Hi.
Hi.
Back there. My name is Libby Schaff. I'm born and raised in the city of Oakland. And in 1989, I got hired by the old Oakland Neighborhood Association to put on a street fair. I have been on the staff of Festival at the Lake. Anybody remember Festival at the Lake?
Remember that?
And so they wanted me to come put on a street fair because at that time, in 1989, all of this was empty and abandoned. There was no one here. So this is answering your question. 1989, part of what they wanted to prove was that you could, and I am not, this is someone else's words, that you could come to downtown Oakland at night after dark and not be killed or mugged. That literally was part of what they were trying to demonstrate. That you could bring back this part of the city in a way that felt safe to people. And so I put on a street fair. And in fact, in this building, we added at the last minute a fundraiser to try and support, it was called Save the Oakland Music Program, STOMP, to try and help support music programs in the Oakland Public Schools, because at this point, our education system was reeling from the impacts of Prop 13, right, back when it was actually new. We had a sold-out benefit dinner here in Swan's Market, because at the time, this building was under contract with Alice Waters to create a new, food market. And everyone was really excited about that, because in 1989, Oakland had seen a lot of flight. Oakland had seen a lot of abandonment. And all the focus back then was to try and revitalize the city, to get people back. And that is in sharp contrast to the struggles that we have now, which is how do we adjust to the people that are flooding into our city, right? Very different dynamic. We had a very successful event, sold out. 4 days later, I'm in the historic offices across the street. I went to sharpen my pencil at Steve Lowe's pencil sharpener in his office, and Loma Prieta hit. So I was in this right here during Loma Prieta. And the first thing I did was run outside, and I saw all the beautiful ceramic work on the corner of this building had fallen to the ground. So this was a very personal invitation to me to participate in this conversation. I also spent 9 years on the board of MoCA, the Museum of Children's Art, which used to have its offices right here. I literally celebrated my 44th birthday in this space. So I have very deep feelings about the evolution of this space, but also a very visceral memory of what it felt like in 1989, where we were trying to get people to come to Oakland. We were trying to get people to invest in Oakland and believe in the value of this city. To today, where we are reeling from this just stampede of interest, of energy, of wealth that is threatening rather than lifting up our most vulnerable communities, and wealth that is feeling like it is threatening the culture of our city. And so that is my introduction. For those of you who don't know, I am currently the mayor of Oakland. I have been serving in that role for a little more than 2.5 years at this moment for Oakland. That is my history with this space.
Wow. Well, I have to script everything so I don't forget anything. I'll just start by telling you who I am. I'm Gail Dixon. I'm born and raised in Berkeley and Oakland. And I grew up in the segregated section of 40th Street. It was right in the middle of the block. And we weren't allowed to own or rent housing on either side. And I grew up there, and how I heard of Housewives Market was one word. It wasn't Housewives Market, it was Swan's Housewives Market. and it was just one word. You said one, you said the other together. So you were either going to Swan's Housewife Market, or you had been to Swan's Housewife Market. And it was where everybody went. It was where everybody in my community, in my world, this is where they went. And I know of people who have gone there, and it's like, it was fun to go down to Swan's Housewives Market because they had there was a lot of immigrants, or migration rather, from Louisiana that settled in this area. So they had a lot of Louisiana type food that was down in Swan's Housewives Market. And people would see family and friends, and it was a place to gather as well. I came of age in the 60s, so I do have a little bit of history with this area. I came of age in the 60s. In 1966, I graduated and from high school, and the Black Panther Party was formed in 1966. I went to Laney Community College. I went to Merritt Community College, and there I got a cultural as well as political, I gained cultural and political awareness there. So in comes April 1968, little Bobby Hutton was murdered. He was the first member, 17-year-old of the Black Panther Party. He was murdered. That was in April 1968. In May 1968, my husband, my mother, and I went down to Housewives Market to boycott it. We were demanding that the police officer that killed him would be indicted, and we wanted an end to police brutality and harassment of black people. And so in July 1968, the Downtown Retail Merchants Association acquiesced or relented to 8 of the 11 demands for police reform. I think they're still reforming.
I assure you they are.
Okay. Later, I moved to Seattle, Washington, and in '72, we came back down along with other members of the Black Panther Party to work in the Oakland, a base of operation campaign, basically to make Oakland, or to encourage Oakland to be a model city. And to that end, we ran Bobby Seale for mayor and Elaine Brown for city council. And I was an artist, so I drew for the back pages of the Black Panther newspaper, and Emory Douglas was in charge, and he helped me give social and political commentary to my images. And so we, after that, oh, I also was a preschool teacher for the Oakland Community School, another model in education. So we had been trying to set up models for Oakland for a long time. And after that, after I left the party, I went back to school, got my MDiv, became an ordained minister, and I pastored South Berkeley Community Church. And I would see children, sometimes they would have potato chips for dinner. And so I organized a Friday night art and dinner program where kids used art to express themselves, but also to learn about other cultures, because the neighborhood was becoming diverse, and so we would learn about other cultures of the world. They can never leave the neighborhood, and they will have traveled the world. And so then also the church housed the Little Bobby Hutton tutor and literacy program at the church. And then I worked at low-income housing and for seniors. And then I retired from that. But then I reconnected with Elaine Brown and her organization, and I currently work for Oakland and the World, which is about, the mission is about the formerly incarcerated, launching for-profit businesses for the formerly incarcerated. So they would be like entrepreneurs owning and operating their own businesses, and for those people who have faced barriers to employment and the economy that we are living in. And so they have a farm down on 7th and Campbell. If you want to wander down there across the street from the post office, 7th and Campbell, there's a farm, beautiful. I mean, if you just look at it visually, it's just some beautiful food there, okay? And they just, the city council just awarded the organization to build 80 units of 100% affordable housing. Now, the question that I had to give you all of that. The question I had was about values. So I think from what you heard, some of the values is about service and business. And another value is about a gathering place for members of the community. So I'm going to read what I have here about service and value. I don't want to bore you guys, so just stretch or yawn or interrupt me and tell me to shut up. You're talking too much or whatever. I'm okay with that. But services and businesses have been here in the past. However, what I think has to be made clear and understanding is that sharing was not a value that was practiced. It was a one-sided relationship. And the profits from the businesses didn't benefit everybody in the community, a particular group, meaning African Americans. And yet we were contributors to the profits that the businesses and in the downtown area earned. And I think the challenge is how to combine education and the arts. Education around Oakland's true history, because when I was doing some research for, they had a quilt exhibit, and I was doing some research about Swan's Market. When I came to talk about that, I was looking up about the boycott and Swan's Market. If you just look on the internet, there is information about Swan's Housewives Market as it was coming into being, and it's how it flowered and flourished. And then of course there's the flight into the suburbs, and the money leaves Oakland, and of course there's this condition that Libby was describing. And then it starts all over again with, now we're building up, da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, that part that's left out, that's part of Oakland's history. And it needs to be part of what, especially new people coming in, the suburbs that are gentrifying, coming back in, everybody needs to understand the true history of Oakland. If we are going to really be about Oakland being a new place, a place of community. And I think that if we wanted to be a vision of hope and really look at what we want Oakland to look like, and culture being via the arts is always a positive way to share who you are with others. And I think there is a need to lift up how we intersect, and how we intersect with each other, and how we are interdependent on each other. Because it's true, we are interdependent on each other. And what our gifts are, and our talents are, and what our needs are, and the resources should be allocated accordingly. And this is how I see it. So the values are about community, and how do we make that value really visible here in this very diverse area that we live in. I'm just going to say one quick little thing. I was looking at some census tracts for Oakland, and in 1950 and 1960 the census was native white, foreign-born white, Negro, Japanese, and Chinese. 2000, 2010, it's white, black, Asian, Pacific Islander, some other group, Hispanic black, Hispanic white, mixed group. I mean, we are diverse, okay? We are diverse. And so the challenge is going to be, how do you create community within such diversity without pushing a group out? Or,
I'm going to try it again. I'm trained as an elementary school teacher. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Great. It's very fitting that I go after Gail because she finished high school in 1966. I was born in 1966. So I always feel like that gives me a connection to the Black Panther Party because I was born in the same year. I claim it. I was born in San Francisco, raised in Oakland. I lived in San Francisco for 8 months, and even at that time, San Francisco was more expensive than Oakland, and my parents were looking for a place to buy a home and found a home in Oakland. My mom taught for years at Markham Elementary School. I taught at John Sweat, K-8, and now I am the chair of the education department at Holy Names University. Swans and Housewives Market are a cornerstone of my growing up because, as Gail mentioned, it has historically been a meeting place. My parents were from Monroe, Louisiana, and so every time we would come to Swans or Housewives Market, my parents would see someone from their home community in Louisiana that they hadn't seen for a long time. So the importance of gathering and community are what come to mind when I think of Swans. Libby mentioned the white flight, white flight to the suburbs, and so did Gail. What we sometimes don't think about when we talk about that phenomenon regarding the housing in Oakland is that allowed for the diversity to be developed in a lot of neighborhoods. So I grew up in East Oakland, and what we know is that when those homes became available, that's when a lot of African Americans and Latinos and Asians were able to buy in the city and move eastward. So we do experience the tensions of what it means to have people who are longtime residents, people who are local residents. And my question, being number 3, is how can a place express history, and how does this help maintain these place-based values? And I think that an event that we are having today is an example of how that can be done through the sharing of story and remembrance, and for places like Swans to know and celebrate their place in historical continuum, because 100 years is a century, and so there are lots of things that have happened in that century of being, and to recognize that and to promote that is very important, so that as our new residents come, they see that they are in a moment in the history of the place, but they are not defining the history of the place. They're part of the evolution of something that has been. So historical events, story, art, and having events and convenings where people can come and talk organically and share their experiences of the place.
I want to quickly turn to your questions, but I just want to I realize I didn't contextualize a little bit of what Swans is for folks today, because I think what we've heard is some amazing sense of the history of what it has been and how it actually became what it is today, whether it's Lola Prieta, creating the conditions for a revitalization and redevelopment. The protests really, I think, set an agenda for the way it got redeveloped that first time around in the 90s. Or even the way today even still in some ways tries to operate in that space as a gathering point. And I just want to say a few words about that, to say that it took a lot of work to do this over the last 20 years. And Josh was there at the beginning, right? This was one of the first projects that used something called New Markets tax credits in the country, a way of leveraging federal tax credits to do this kind of project. But it took 2 rounds of that, right, to make it what it is today, right? It took doing it once, getting it stabilized, getting the key components in place, creating the affordable housing that's directly across the courtyard to make sure you all know that that exists here, right? To create the conditions so that the co-housing could exist around behind to the right of the courtyard, and also the nonprofits, the space for nonprofits and small businesses of Oakland in this upper floor here, as well as the downstairs, which is a lot of the retail facing businesses. And that took, again, 1 round of New Market tax credits years ago, and another round of that in the last 5 years to really be able to invest over a long term. And what that is the values of patience and adaptability, but being led by an entity that and the community that really believes in things like everyone should have access to jobs and an opportunity. And the way that's playing out now is in the central market area, where it's all mostly restaurants now. All but 1 or 2 of those were first-time business owners, right? So, as a place for new businesses to grow, that's what this market now is. Another really great story is that the East Bay Asian Local Development Corporation has another project with the city and Oakland Housing Authority out in East Oakland called Lion Creek Crossings, and a resident there opened a market in Lion Creek Crossings, and just today or the day before, this week, had their opening of his second market here in Swan's Market. So low-income resident of public assisted housing, opening a market in East Oakland, and now opening a second location here in the heart of Oakland, right? So giving opportunity for folks who are who have the least access to resources and capital and opportunity to tap into what is happening in downtown, and being able to leverage the fact that when people come who are newer to Oakland, they're actually able to spend money somewhere that is actually directly benefiting a resident in East Oakland and the low-income family. So, and to me, that actually speaks back to the history of what it used to be when it was Swan's House on His Market. A colleague of mine's grandfather had a market stall at the time. And he said that as new immigrants to the U.S., one income household could support a 3-generation family, right? And out of a market stall at Swan. So that legacy and how do you do that kind of thing is not dissimilar to the story of the new market that's opening, Dallas Market, right on 8th Street here, of an immigrant to the U.S. opening a market, being able to quit his job, and just support his family on this business. So that is another way that the patience and the values-driven community development has allowed Swans to become a place to anchor some of that. And so that's sort of an update that draws from, I think, the stories that you all share. So now we want to turn it over to you to gather some questions that you have for the folks who are here today, who have both a contemporary and historical perspective on what Swans has been, what it could be, and the way this kind of work of holding place-based values in a building, in a space, can actually contribute to supporting Oakland going forward, balancing those tensions that we're feeling now. So please, questions, and I'll write them down so we can, then we'll deliberate a little bit and come up with a conversation we want to have. So just shout out, yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Linda Brown. I'm with the California Writers Club, and I represent the Writers Club through the Friends of Joaquin Miller Park. So this is my political question for Libby. It doesn't seem that the city really supports the history of the way Joaquin Miller Park was developed and the 100+ years of the Writers Club. And I'd like to know how to engage better. I write to the elected officials, and it seems like, oh, if it doesn't benefit folks in other districts, they're not going to support it, and yet it's a wonderful opportunity for the kids to camp out. They're doing that for 3 weekends this summer. There could be history walks, and it's just kind of out, and we don't have a park ranger, so there's vandalism of both city property as well as some historical historical plaques. what will we do?
You know, I'm going to answer your question after this, because this is a space
We're talking
about
about this space
Swan's
here.
Market.
Well,
I'm happy
we'll,
to talk
let me
about
take these questions. I reserve the right to edit. I'll find a way to make sure they relate. So great. I mean, it's a relevant and interesting question that's sort of a different parallel to what's happening.
Yeah.
So great, thank you.
Parallel.
Yeah, please. Sorry, let me just go to the back and then up here. Okay, great.
I'm Diane Rushwood, I'm a board, a member of the board for involves affordable housing. And I grew up in Oakland, and Swan's Housewife's Market was a place where poor folks could come, and not everybody was poor, but we were, and could come and get clothing and buy food. And if you didn't have a car, there were people who would drive you back home, and so there was this kind of synergy and support for a class of folks who really were struggling, you know. And so I wonder how we can marry that history with what's going on here now at Swan's. I think it's really important to remember that history and bring it forward.
Great, yeah, thank you. Up here?
My name is Steve Martino. I live in Berkeley and with the Friends of Adeline. We have a really intimate connection to the Berkeley South Berkeley Community Church. But what I'm interested in, and I think they'll get three different approaches to this, and I want to hear all three from the three of you, is the story that I heard when Jerry Brown was running for mayor, was that one of his campaign ideas was to form a finance co-op, a debt co-op for local businesses, mainly in this area of Oakland, primarily black businesses, as a co-op that would provide financing for starting these businesses. And then I didn't hear anything more about it after a while, and I'm wondering what happened to that idea.
Wow, the range of questions is awesome. There are a couple more of like yet a different stripe, of a different nature. Let's try to mix it up again.
I'm Paula Kirkendall, and I'm a native of Oakland and Berkeley. And my family's had a real estate firm since 1948. So they were part of our value system, and that we never have slums, that the standard living was, well, mine is house, car, and vacation, but the standard living was basic standard, and that my father shopped at Housewife Market, raised 8 children, and they're all living.
I'm the youngest.
So we determined that was like a European market because we met everyone. You had all your merchants there, and so that's how we ate every 2 weeks. Small refrigerator, so that was it. But then we got sold on urban renewal, and we didn't know that the flight went out to Concord or through the tunnel. And once BART gets into town, you can't sit down. So that came through all of our neighborhoods and took out a lot of black businesses that weren't able, the second generation didn't come back. And so to maintain our value, our standard of living should never go down. And no, I don't want them in no warehousing with dust mites and all that. No, there has to be a standard, and that was what they prayed for. And so my question now is that where are we now? Then we went to all those meetings to have a shopping mall. And so we were supposed to get sales tax because we were going to be a service industry. We had the federal building came in, we had the state building came in, but that was going to be a 99-year lease. So we had those jobs. And so that was going to be the base. And then Jerry Brown came in and said, he was going to put 10,000 people downtown to support downtown, which was fine. But, you know, maybe they had that flag flying that should never been put up. And something beneath the surface. And the final thing is that my uncle built the Acorn Apartments, which was never to be sold. And he got the AIA, the Architect Association, design for that. townhouse, everybody standard living. And then the other churches came in and we met a need for senior citizens. But you can't have Thanksgiving dinner up there, you know, low rent and no rent. But we still knew that in the future, we were going to need those places. And the churches stepped in. And so a lot of those senior homes are under the church faith base. So I'm just disturbed that we can't let this thing go. We can't let that vision go because that wasn't our values. And then as far as the police department, we have to stay on top of them. Thank God we got this new commission coming in because we have to stand on top of what's right. Our children are at a stake, and we're a melting pot. We're here to maintain those values that we inherited. That's our inheritance. It wasn't going to be a lump sum of money because I tried that. But it was going to be that our standard of living was never to go down. And so this area still was centered. So when they tore downtown down, there was a flag flying beneath the surface that said, we're going to wait for South Africa to be free before we come back. So this is awareness that, and I don't know if there's a question in there because I've questioned this a lot because I've seen the cycle go up and down. And so if we are going to maintain the city, we need sales tax, we need to bring in businesses, entrepreneurs, and this is a center, this was the beginning, this was a center point for all of us. But we're diverse into these communities and we have the farmers market, so all those places need to be supported. But I still like to see, I don't want to see Walnut Creek and Livermore get all our sales tax. I think that, well, the merchants are going to be suffering, so you know, dig that. They won't always make it. But these are important facts, I think, that we were sold on, and they never materialized.
I will try to parse something out of that. So one more, and then we'll figure out how we. Okay, great, yeah. So why don't we go here and then. Sure. Sorry, yeah. There's not a great music company.
I'm Margaret Shelida, and I just realized that this week I'm celebrating my 40th year as an Oakland resident. And what I love about Oakland is the collection of neighborhoods that we have. You know, so one of the things that has always attracted me about my neighborhood, Piedmont Avenue, which is a nice neighborhood, is that there are shops and a movie theater and a church, and I would come home from work on a Friday afternoon and I could get away with not having to drive my car all weekend because, you know, I could walk everywhere and do things. And my question for the panelists is, how do we maintain that sense of neighborhood? And I know we have other neighborhood associations and similar support structures and services in neighborhoods, but not all neighborhoods are equal in what's available to the residents. And what is the impact of gentrification? And because I know that in my neighborhood when I moved in 40 years ago, I was one of the youngest, and now I'm one of the oldest. And it's wonderful to see.
Discussing the area and what was in it. And it started out as a conversation and a protest about something that was going on. It descended into a hateful speech because the groups were different, Jewish, Palestinian, Middle Eastern, and Black. So it descended and people were practically calling each other names. So I said, wait a minute, I thought a lot has been done. But apparently it's missed because I just totally believe that hatred solves nothing. If you're going to speak, it has to be with respect to each other and to listen to every side and come to a solution. So that's just something I observed coming from the Belleville neighborhood, and I wondered why this is still going on to this degree of hatefulness toward each other.
Facing a lot of things, I think. For example, I think this question around the legacy of how Swans was a place where, because of the way services and offerings were provided, it became a there were no class boundaries, right? Or there were fewer barriers to class engagement here because you could get rides home, you didn't have to own a car, all these things. Relates to the, in some ways, the promise question, the question around, that I was trying to tease out of this notion that there was a promise about what downtown was going to be and how it was going to serve all of the city. Which,
Can you just let us each respond to, I mean.
the whole sentiment?
Yeah.
Are you-
Like,
are you all-
there's a beautiful kind of gumbo.
Yeah, no, and I'm just
that
trying to
I'm sure
restate.
listening,
Yeah, I'm just
from
trying
each
to.
of us.
Yeah, so great. Well, so I'll do that. I'm just trying to restate what people, the sentiment, and then I'd love it if you all were willing to do that. I think that the sort of promise question relates, the very specific question around, there was a promise of a, co-op business financing program, so that's a very detailed thing. I think those sort of relate to one another. I think it's really important to ask the question of how do you make every neighborhood of Oakland full of opportunity. Again, that sort of relates to the promise because I think the idea was that the promise of tax base in downtown was that I was going to generate revenue to support resources around the city and the opportunity to like build up things like maybe like Swans in all parts of the city, for example, right? Not literally, but metaphorically. This question of hatred is and how it plays out as we experience it in our neighborhoods and our spaces is, I don't know how it fits in, but I think to me, you bringing up the notion that the protest here was not about do we get to shop here or not, economic opportunity, which you also brought up, but it was about police violence. And that hasn't, like many other things, has not felt like it has changed. And so that notion does seem like it's really resonant, deserves some kind of conversation. And lastly, this question of the Writers Club. I will say that I had no idea that thing existed.
I'll let you know.
I will admit to one story about Swans is that I grew up in the East Bay as well, in Oakland and Berkeley. And my father was really involved in community development in Oakland in the 80s. And I distinctly remember Rados growing up. Like 100%. Like the cafeteria next door, the bins, and I have no memory of Swans. This block is like a blank slate in some ways. Until I came back and sort of became involved, it really, I had no, it could have been one of the parking lots in downtown. In fact, I thought Rados was surrounded by parking lots. So I think the notion that, how do we make, when we have something that's positive, whether it's the Writers Club or Swans now, how do you make it really stand out so that people, to what I think you all said earlier is like, how do you make places like this communicate the values? Because whether we're long time and new to an area or new to an area, you need to have that sense of it, the values of what it was communicating to each other, or else you miss out on the opportunity of the humanities, and that's why we're here today. So that's my summary. If you all, please, I think you all have amazing wisdom to share about this. So maybe you can go in reverse order after that.
Sure. So in my listening, should I stand? In my listening, clearly as an educator and a resident, what really resonated with me were your comments about neighborhoods, and one linchpin of neighborhoods is schools, and also having communities be stable. And so what I think about is how do we ensure that Oakland residents get to work and get to work in careers that can sustain them. So just very transparently, my whole thing is that local residents should be the people who teach in local public schools. And what I know about that is a teaching salary is a stable salary that you can raise a family on. And so really looking for ways to stabilize neighborhoods through employment, and that will allow the schools to be stable, and the neighborhood associations can flourish because you have people who are able to take care of themselves. I taught in the aftermath of probably the height of the crack epidemic. And so I was able to see where families weren't present, not because they didn't want to be, but because they had been distracted by drugs, but also when industry leaves and there's no training in jobs that can sustain, what happens to the schools, which are a foundation of the community. So my thinking is we get local residents working in the jobs that our tax dollars pay for. Oakland Unified School District hires 200 teachers every year. It's about $8 million in salary, and that should go to people who are already here, who know about the businesses that can sustain our communities. So in listening sort of to everything, that's the thing that I flashed on. I live in District 7, and I always think about how come we don't have sort of like a commerce area like the Fruitvale. We do have the Foothill Square that Larry Reed has worked very hard on to revitalize, but when I'm driving down MacArthur and Foothill, all of those businesses between Castlemont and like 98th could be revitalized. We could have bakeries there. We could have nail salons and things like that. So I don't know as much about the promise that you talked about of the co-op for Black businesses, but I do know that when Dellums was in office, and as he was getting into office, we talked about incubating Black businesses so that Black businesses could learn how to be sustainable and best practices and all of that. And so I think something like that for not only Black businesses, but Latino and Asian businesses along that corridor would be very, very valuable. And I would definitely patronize it, because now I have to go sort of out of my local area. I don't have a Piedmont Avenue or a Grand Lake neighborhood that I can recycle my dollars.
Just to piggyback off of that, bottom line, I think what we were talking about. Oh, I'm sorry. sorry. Is we have to really rethink and change how we. It's not business as usual. You know, we have to really change how we implement the value of service and business here. So we have, like I mentioned about Oakland and the World has the for-profit business entrepreneurials for the formerly incarcerated. It's like, what are we going to do as a city to really embrace that, to make sure that all of it is a success? And I think that's something that a city, we haven't seen it anywhere. So Oakland can be a model again. I mean, not again, but a model.
Well, that's a perfect segue to me. I think even though I'm just basking in my memories of this physical neighborhood, and I'll be honest, I remember my mom taking me to Housewives, and I hated it because it smelled like raw meat and fish. I'm surprised I'm not a vegetarian from that experience. But so I think my job is to say, what is your city government doing to address some of the issues that you've raised? And sometimes we don't kind of broadcast these things well enough. And I'll just start with the good news. I don't remember Jerry Brown's promise around that debt thing, but what I can tell you is that Oakland actually has the strongest partnership with something called Kiva. And Kiva Oakland, I actually just found this out yesterday. We are their most successful city in the United States of America. We have facilitated 408 no-interest loans to small Oakland businesses. What percentage of SBA loans do you think are made to African American owned businesses? Fewer than 2%. How many to Latino businesses? Fewer than 4%. How many to women-owned businesses, right? We make up half of the population, 4%. I'm very pleased to say that the Kiva loans in Oakland, 67% to women-owned businesses, and 78% to businesses owned by people of color. 78%. Because we have been intentional, because the current structure of commercial lending institutionalizes oppression. Because you have to have a credit score, you have to have collateral, you have to already be rich to borrow money. It does not make sense. If you're rich, why do you need to borrow money, right? Kiva uses an ancient principle of character, of who do we trust? Who has a community that they are a part of, and that is kind of what is going to secure that loan. And the default rate on those Oakland loans is lower than any commercial bank. We have an 87% repayment rate for those Oakland loans. Again, more than $2 million in interest-free loans to 408, I think, was like, actually, it might be some more because I got on this morning, I made a few loans. I love this. So if you all can do one thing for me to make yourselves feel good about what this promise actually was kept in a different way. Because who's providing those loans? We are. No, you. You. Do you all have $25 that you're not doing anything with right this minute? You can make a loan as little as $25. These are crowdsourced loans. So no, it's not the city, it's us. It is empowering the community to be the bank of its own community. That's why I am so passionate about this model, because that is the answer, right? We have it within ourselves. So if you go to kiva.org/Oakland, kiva.org/Oakland, you can both find out how you can lend, again, as little as $25 to a local business. Or if you are a business, you can also find out how to apply for one of these loans. But this kind of disrupting an oppressive commercial banking system, I am very proud that Oakland, California is the leader in this in the United States. We've done more loans than New York City. Anyway, yes, I'm a little proud about that. All right. Sorry, off my soapbox. The taxation system somebody was talking about, sales tax. Sales tax is pretty regressive. We need to fix the property tax system. The fact that people are rewarded for leaving their property empty, which impacts neighborhoods. We were talking about East Oakland, how it lacks the vitality and that sense of neighborhood. That's because I believe that is because our taxation system is rewarding the wrong things and not punishing the wrong things. So I just wanted to highlight that. The other piece of sense of neighborhood that I'm very passionate about, the city controls the public space. When you actually do an aerial of the city of Oakland, 20% of the land mass of the city of Oakland are roads. How do we reimagine how we use those roads? You said what made Piedmont Avenue, and again, I live about four houses up from Margaret, such a magical neighborhood is we didn't need to get in our cars. And so you will start to see, and this is part of why I created a Department of Transportation for the first time in Oakland, because we need to reimagine how we are using that public space. 20% of our city are roads. How are we encouraging people to get out of their cars, which seals them off from their community, and walk or bike? Did everybody see the bike share that just launched last week? Very exciting. So how do we create public spaces that bring people together to gather? Ivana from my office is here. Was I like practically in tears when we drove around Lake Merritt today? Like Lake Merritt is like the living room of Oakland. Is it not just like stunningly beautiful? Why doesn't every neighborhood have a little piece of Lake Merritt in it? And that's part of it. When we look at public space and how we create the public space, and that's what's going on outside. You've got this courtyard here. You blocked off the street. Look at, you're making better use of that street today than letting the dumb cars drive down it, right? So that is how we all need to stand up for our physical public spaces. And again, I own that as my responsibility as your city government? It's a struggle right now because this moment of for Oakland, of people coming into our city and making us feel threatened, that they don't respect our values, that they want to kick us out of our affordable housing, that they want to displace our families. That is a real fear, and I respect that. And yet, that othering, this division of longtime Oakland versus new Oaklanders, that is a dangerous trap for us to fall into. Because I like to say, I'm not going to be like Donald Trump. I'm not going to build a wall around Oakland. I'm not going to vilify newcomers. I'm not going to vilify outsiders, right? Doesn't that sound familiar? Those are the values that Oakland has always stood up against. And so let us not practice it in our own city. So this hatred, this anger, it really pains me because I don't think it's who we are. And the anger really should be directed at what somebody else pointed out. This is the first generation that will not be as well off as their parents. We have never seen the level of income inequality that we are seeing right now. That is what makes me angry. But I can't direct that at a person who is buying a condo a block away. So I struggle with that myself, but I just want to name that. So anyway, thank you.
I think you all modeled what we want to leave with, which is a call to action a little bit. So, but I also want to make sure you each had an explicit chance to give it the sort of name a specific call to action that you think would be helpful. You know, so like Keep Alone or whatnot, but like specific call to action that helps us think about how we do this work of holding place values in community in places like this. So, for instance, Kimberly, you mentioned like the school district and like 200 jobs. Is there something about that you feel like you can spread the word on, that you feel like people really need to like say or do or tell?
Yes. I'm glad you asked. In much the same way we would want a local hire policy for city contracts, we should have a local hire policy for teachers in the Oakland Unified School District, so that those who are residents have priority in the housing, that we have priority in the hiring, and so that being from Oakland and carrying the cultural cachet is valuable in the hiring process, and we recognize that our students need to have people who live next door to them teaching them. So my thought would be, if those of you who see yourselves as activists go to the Oakland Unified School District board meetings and ask for demographic data, how many are African American, how many are Latino, how many are Asian, so that that information is surfaced, and how many are Oakland residents, would be absolutely powerful. And right, and the same thing with the police. So that would be my call to action, and also to talk about teaching in a positive way. When people in your sphere say they want to be teachers, encourage them to do that, so that we don't hear the backlash like, why do you want to do that, or you've all heard teachers don't make any money. Those kinds of things, that we disrupt that narrative and reify it as the great profession that it is.
I think that we also need to look at the encampment, stuff that's really present right now. There's an encampment underneath the freeway there, as well as, like you said, the police. There's a lot of change. I mean, we can talk about building little conversation pieces in different places of the city, but we also have to address certain needs that are right now. And there was a Stanford study in 2016 that said that the harassment and the brutality, the difference between back then when I was coming of age and now is that it's expanded to include other groups, you know. So there's a lot that we have to work on as well, you know, to deal with making this a place of community.
But so let me just push, is there something specific you want to tell folks that they should be doing about supporting Oakland in the world?
Yes, you can.
I'm not trying to feed you.
No, but you can go to the website, Oakland in the World, and you can donate to the website, and also you can come down to the farm and purchase some vegetables. Oh, they can't do it there? Okay, sorry. At any rate, you can go online, see what it's about, and you can donate to Oakland in the World online. It's oaklandintheworld.org. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Volunteers. Do you need volunteers? So you already heard my Kiva loan one. Again, $25. And once you get paid back, you can relend it to someone else. It's kind of fun. Here's another one. Another website to write down. rapwp.oaklandnet.com.
Could you repeat that, please?
Are we supposed to guess what that's?
RAPWT, I know it's a horrible, horrible URL, I'm working on it. RAPWP, RAP, to offend these rights. And so this, what is breaking my heart is people being pushed out of their homes. And this is really important that people know. So make a loan on Kiva and tell a renter where their rights are.
Great, so thank you. I just want to wrap up by saying, and just offer one call to action prerogative, just as a moderator, to say that I think so much of what we've talked about, sort of what you've suggested as like call to actions even, relate to this idea that we can get together to support and help ourselves. Everything from essentially peer-to-peer small actions like Kiva, $25, right? But we all know $25 is not solving like policing issue or whatever. But at the other end of the scale as well, like what exists at the other end of the scale? In my role of policy, I think for us that often means policy, right? And that the idea is that one way that if we really care about the cultural values that really have helped hold what Oakland has been, and we want to carry that forward, one opportunity is to think about how our cultural values get manifest in all dimensions of policy in Oakland, right? So what would it mean to actually have a cultural equity component of all city plans, right? So it's not just a cultural plan for what the arts and cultural organizations are doing, but really what is the cultural dimension of the transportation plan and the housing plan and the open space plan, right? Like how do we specifically reference the way that culture needs to be addressed, and both in the process as well as the description of what's in the plan itself, right? So that there's a way that everything that we talk about and care about actually become codified into the way the city actually operates and plans for its community. So that's my sort of suggestion, is that think it, push and say that the considerations you all have, right? Because we know that you're here today means you care about the culture and life of the community. So that means how do we actually get those things to be directly addressed, not by translating them into like bureaucratic speak. Like what we don't want is to translate use of streets into some kind of like transportation language, right? What we want is that the way cultural communities use streets to be directly translated into the transportation plans, right? So how do we do that? How do we ask for that? How do we call for that? And that's what I would offer to you all. And one of the things that Policy Link has done recently is create a report called Creating Change Through Arts, Culture, and Equitable Development. We have some copies here if you'd like that. That maybe are some suggestions about how you might start to do some of that. So thank you to you all. Thanks to everyone who's hosted us, Julie and Humanities. Thanks you all for attending. Thank you. One last round of applause for
Remiss if I did not issue a call to action, since my board member Jeff Adachi is here and my past board chair Margaret Shellida is here. Also engage with us here at California Humanities. We're part of this community. We love being here. You can look online, www.calhome.org, make a donation, apply for a grant, see what events are coming up of our grantees. If you haven't signed up for our monthly e-newsletter, please do so as you leave, because we want to share with you all the good things we're doing, not only here